Hey folks, so we're back, and by this point, you should have drawn out your letter forms and brought them into digital some way. You could scan them in, and if you scan them in, I would say scan them in at a resolution of 300 pixels per inch. You could take a photograph with a DSLR camera, or you could even take a photograph with your cell phone. If it's your cell phone, I would say make sure it's a high quality cell phone, like an iPhone or a Droid or something like that. That's going to give you a good image. If you don't have that, I would say, if you can, really get to a scanner or use a DSLR camera. Something that's just going to give you a good image. Scanners are really common, so you could use any of those and that would be fine. If you need to, you can even get to the campus and you can use the scanners there. They're all in the open labs. And if you don't know how to, by any chance, a lab assistant could help you out. So what we have is I've got that stuff that I showed you last class. Now, just so you're clear, I'm going to zoom in here, right? This is 100% a drawing, okay? You can see that you see the pencil line, and you can see how they went ahead and they filled this in with either really dark pencil or with a pen, okay? And so I have two of the exact same ones. I'm going to show you two processes. Depending on how good your drawing is, depends on the process that you're going to do. So process one is going to start in Photoshop and end in Illustrator. And then process two is going to skip over Photoshop and just go to Illustrator. So again, this is process one, all right? And if you have Photoshop, this might be worth the extra 5 or 10 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and do a file open and go ahead and find these. So here's demo one. I'll open this right up. And what I want to do in Photoshop is actually really, really simple. I want to boost the contrast. And there's all sorts of ways to do this non-destructively. And if you've taken Graphics 1 with me or Graphics 2 with me or anybody else, in fact, or any photography courses, you know as well as I do that we want to work as non-destructive as possible. In this case, I'm going to work destructively, but that's okay because I'm going to save it as a different name, so I'll always keep my originals. So I'm going to go to Image and Adjustments, and I'm going to go to Levels. Now, just so we're clear, what levels are going to do is it shows us this thing here. This is called a histogram. Now, this is a very interesting looking histogram because, frankly, there's a lot of white on that page and just a little bit of black and then almost no gray whatsoever. So what we have sliders here, right? So this first slider on the left-hand side, if we slide this closer to the right, what it's going to do is it's going to make our darks darker. And you can see that this letter E gets really, really dark. All those little kind of empty spots inside of there, they all disappear and they go away. What else happens though is the paper actually gets a little more coarse and we can start to see it. And the gray lines here, they kind of get a little coarse. Now, this middle slider here, these are for your grays. So if I move them to the left, all my grays start to fade out. If I move them to the right, my grays start to really kind of enhance. So that's what that does. Now, with the slider over here on the left, or excuse me, on the right, this is your whites, your brights. So if I move that to the left, wow, look at that. It really brightens this document up. And it takes all those other things and it kind of makes them disappear. And now I have a really contrasting image. So I'm going to use these together and watch what I'm going to do. I'll pull this back, start here with these whites and pull them back. And you see how there are mountains. Now, when I talk about levels, I think of mountains. And mountains have peaks. And they also have valleys. So what I really do, right, is I take this slider and I drag it to where the mountain starts to dip and we have a valley. And then I'm going to take this dark slider here and I'm going to go in the complete opposite direction. And then the gray, if I start moving towards the white one, we start to see all this kind of extra kind of noise building here. And if I move it towards the black one, I start to like lose stuff. So I got to be really careful with that. Because again, I'm trying to create contrast, right? I just don't want to create too much and end up having all that extra noise. So that's pretty good. And as I move around my document, all that extra white stuff is gone. Now, that's pretty fabulous. So I'm going to say okay. And just so you can kind of see the difference, I'm going to just do an edit and undo and edit and undo. And that's all through the power of levels. So I'm just going to do a quick save as, and I'm going to call this demo 1A. So it's different than demo 1. And I do that because I might want to fall back to just the hand-drawn thing at one point or another. So if you come in here and you take this extra step in Photoshop, which you may not need to do, remember that. You may not need to do that. Just name it something different. Now that I've taken the extra step in Photoshop, I'm going to go to Illustrator. And in Illustrator, I'm going to just start off with a brand new document. Or actually, yeah, I'll start off with a brand new document, brand new letter size document, and I'm going to say File and Place. And inside of it, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to place my demo 1A and hit Place, and just drop it right on in there, just like this. Okay. Now, this is a graphic. This is an image right now, right? And I want to be able to go ahead and use these things and create them into vectors. And why? Well, vectors are smooth. That's the main reason why we want to create them into vectors. They're gonna have a nice smooth quality to them, and then therefore our fonts will have a nice smooth quality to them as well. So I'm going to go ahead and create a vector file from this using something called image trace. So if you have an image in Illustrator and you select it, you have all these different things here: embed, edit original, mask, crop image. But in the middle here we have image trace. So it converts this image into a tracing object, as it says right there. So I'll click on that. And it tells me it might proceed slowly. That's okay. Just say okay to that. And it's not really that slow. Usually it goes pretty quickly. And let's just kind of zoom in so we can see what it did, right? So I'm going to say edit and undo again for a second. Now take a look at this E, all right? Do you see how we have this kind of extra kind of junk on it here? And there's like little holes in there and stuff like that. Again, if I go into image trace and let it do its magic, bam, look at that. Super smooth. Really, really, really nice. Now, I will say this about image trace. It doesn't always look like this by default. And so here, if you go ahead and we undo it again, next to image trace is a little drop down menu. And you can try different things. 9 times out of 10, the default's going to work. But if it doesn't, try things like line art or sketched art, black and white logo, that sort of stuff. And to do that, you just click on it and just say again, okay. And it goes through and does it. Now, if you want to change it after you've already made it, like I just did, you can click here to this preset and you can change it to, we'll just say 3 colors. And it's going to go ahead and do it again. Now, I don't recommend doing 3 colors. I just picked that just to show you that it was something different. The reason why is because it's going to try to find different colors in this thing, and it may actually find those little white specks inside of the fonts that I don't really want to see. It didn't do much, but you see how I kind of gave a little bump here? So let's undo that. And now it's nice and smooth again. So I would say you either want black and white logo, sketched art, line art. Those things are going to work. Now, it's a vector now, except it's this one big vector. So we have to go ahead and we have to do what's called expanding it. So if I click on this button right here, expand, it will convert the tracing path into objects and into paths. So I'll click on there. And now I'll zoom in and take a look at that, guys. See all the dots? Okay. Those are the points that Illustrator needs to create the Bezier curves to create vectors. So now we have vectors here. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to grab one, right? Oh, well, they're all connected. Yeah. See, when you expand an object in Illustrator, it all connects. So what you need to do is you need to say object and ungroup. And after you do that, it starts to disconnect. Now, I'm going to tell you right now that you're going to have a couple things you're going to want to just throw away right off the bat. There is a white background. Say goodbye to that. So just select it and hit delete. And then inside of your letter forms, like your A's, your B's, your D's, things like that, you're going to have what we call counters. So you're going to want to just select those, hit delete. And now, check it out. We have all of our letter forms, okay? So what we want to do at this point now is we want to go ahead and bring these over to, to our template. But before I do that, okay, because I showed you how to go from taking your sketch, bringing it into Photoshop and really enhancing its contrast, and then bringing it into Illustrator and embedding. Now, let's try something else really quick. I'll make a new document in Illustrator, just a brand new letter-sized document. And I'm going to say File and Place. And I have something here. It's just called Demo 2 JPEG. And you know what? It's the same exact thing that we had before, except I didn't bring it to Photoshop. Now, let's go ahead and image trace that. And say okay to that. And look what it did. It got rid of a lot of those grays anyway. So, do I need to go into Photoshop? The answer is maybe. Everybody's project is going to be a little different, and yours may need that extra boost of contrast to get into Photoshop to make it really, stand out and look really nice. That's 100% up to you and what you want to do, though. I can tell you this, though. A good font is going to get cleaned up, and it's going to get cleaned up in the beginning. We can upload things to the calligraphr website, and they can be all kind of cruddy, and the fonts will have like weird kind of images in the back because of it. So you want to be careful about that. So you want to make sure that you go through that. But again, we can expand it, and we can, let's say object in a group, select the background out and the counters. And if I look at this object and this object, there's not a whole lot of difference, really. Just a little bit, between these letter forms. So, 6 in one, half dozen in another. Again, yours is going to be based on what you make. If you end up having like kind of a messy piece of paper where you've erased a lot and you've gone ahead and, like you've just, you had like, lead on your hands and stuff like that and smeared on your paper, I suggest going into Photoshop. If you've kept a nice clean piece of paper and you get a nice photograph of it, and do yourself a favor, don't take the photograph like, in your den that has one light in the corner on and you're in the other side of the room. Go into your kitchen or go into your dining room or something like that where there's a nice bright light. Take the photographs in there. So then that way you're going to have just a better light, better images to work with. So what we want to do next is this. We want to go back to our calligraphr templates, right? Our actual ones. And I have this as a PDF that I downloaded, but I'm going to go ahead and I can open up a PDF inside of Illustrator. And so I'm going to do that. So here's my file. The one that has my name on it is the one that is blank. So I'm going to open that right up. Now, when Illustrator opens up a PDF, it's going to ask you what page you want to open. And you can't open them both at the same time. I know Illustrator supports artboards, but it doesn't support pages. Granted, they're pretty much the same thing, but it just doesn't. So anyway, I'll start with page 1. And what I want to do is, as you can see, calligraphr goes ahead and says, like, this is where you put the exclamation point. This is where you go ahead and put the ampersand. This is where you put the parentheses, your apostrophe, your quote marks, all that sort of stuff, right? So here's our numbers, and down here, this is where we go ahead and we put A. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to select A, and I'm going to say edit and copy. And you can start with any letter you want, by the way. But this is the thing that's really important. I'm going to go ahead and paste it in. So Command V, paste. All right, just goes in the middle of the document like that. Now, as you can see, this letter A is too big for my box, right? Okay, so what do? We need to resize it. And what we really want to do is we want to go ahead and think about how it fits. Now, just so we're clear, okay? I want to make sure that we are 100% crystal clear. This, oops, didn't mean to do that. Here we are. This area here and this area here we do not want to use. Okay? So we only want to use from this point up to that point. Okay? So we want to resize this and put it inside of here. And the best way to do it is going to be by using object transform and scale. And we want to play with sizes a little bit. So, okay, so let's just toss a number in there, like 50% uniform. And I'm just going to preview. And we got to look at it and ask ourselves a question. Is it too big? Is it too small? Or is it just right? Well, upon looking at it, I realized right away that it's too big. Okay, so then that doesn't work. So, okay, so I'm going to go down to a lower number. I'll go to around 35%. All right, so again, too big, too small, just right. It's still a little big, because again, right, if you think about it, this is our baseline, this is our X height, this is our cap height, right? So it's still too big. Okay, so now 35 was too big. How's 25? All right, so it's totally hitting the cap height, but it's not hitting the baseline anymore. So 25 is too small. Okay, let's meet somewhere in the middle. 28. That's looking okay, but I think I can go up to 29. And it might be one of those things where you're playing around a little bit, right? And you're trying to do it. Now, I realize that I can't move this, right? That's okay. I can just kind of visualize it and eye it a little bit and just keep hitting this preview button until I find something that I'm happy with. And I think that 29.5 is too high, so I'm going to go back to 29, and I'm going to say, okay. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give it a try. And I'm going to drop this right here on the baseline where it belongs. And check that out, guys. 29 works out great. So what I want to do is on a piece of paper, or I don't know, over here in my file, I just want to write 29 scale. And it's important that you have that in mind, right? Because you're going to go ahead and you have all these other letter forms, right? And so I can grab a bunch of them. So I'll grab them all except for the letter A. And I'll go edit and copy. Jump over here to my template. Just move it off to the side a little bit here and paste. Cool. Okay. So check this out. With all of them selected at once, I'm going to go object transform and scale 29% and say, yep, okay. And now I'm going to start throwing them on there. And I'm literally throwing them on. And we're going to take a look after we kind of just throw them there. We're going to come back to them, okay? So now I got A through E on here, and I'll worry about the rest in a few minutes. And so what I'm going to do is zoom in here, okay? And as you can see, from a distance, I totally didn't put them in the right spot. But what I can do is this, gang. I'm going to select all of them. Oops. Not my background. I don't want my background, so I'm going to highlight that. I'm just going to say object and lock selection, or command 2. So that way I can't grab them. So now I can just do a quick selection here of A through E. And I'm going to go to Window and Align, which it appears I already have open right here. Okay, now this is really important because alignments in Illustrator are your friends. So when you are working with a line, if you go ahead and you select your objects, right, that you want to align, if you then go ahead and you select an object that you want everything to align to, you just need to click it a second time. So I'm going to just come over here. I'm going to click on this A second time. And you see how it highlights like a really dark color here, right? So that is called a key object. So now, when I align, everything's going to be based on my key object. So if I do this correctly and I've got everything sized, I'm going to come up here to my align objects and I'm going to click on this one right here on the top all the way at the right, called vertical align bottom. And when I do that, look at that, B, C, D, and E all ended up at the same exact baseline that A was at. And that, my friends, is a beautiful thing because it just made our lives a whole lot easier. So I'm going to get rid of these things because they're just kind of in the way. And I'm going to do it again for the letters over on the other one. Now, how about like in the middle of this thing? Where do we put it, right? Well, here's the thing. You have room, and you want to try to center it as best as possible. You really do. But you don't want to go crazy over this. Just don't have it all the way on this side, and don't have it all the way on this side. Just center it, and you can kind of eye it. That's okay, right? There's nothing wrong with doing that because you're going to see that we'll have the opportunity to kind of play around with these a little bit more once you're onto the website. And I'm just using my left and right arrows to kind of align those. All right, so then over here, same thing. I'm just going to go ahead and grab F and G and H, I, J, K, and L. If I had M, I would just do M there, but M's on another file, right? Zoom in. It doesn't matter which one you use. I'll use G, for example, because that's in the middle, right? And I'm going to just go ahead and bring it down a little bit to my baseline. That looks pretty good to me. Highlight them all. Click on G a second time. And then vertical align bottom. Boom. They all align. And again, wonderful thing. And just kind of move them around, center them, and again, you can eye it. No big deal there. And you're going to want to do this, and you're going to want to fill in all the characters. So I'm going to do this myself. I'm going to fill in everything. You don't need to watch me do the whole page. And when we come back, we are going to take a look at what our next step is here. All right? Thank you very much.